I dropped my keys on the counter and kicked off my shoes like I always did after a late shift. The house was quiet, too quiet. I just pulled 10 hours on the crisis hotline, listening to strangers break apart over the phone. But nothing hit me harder than the single blinking light on my landline. One message. I poured a drink before hitting play, thinking it was just another reminder about a dental appointment I'd cancel anyway. But the second I heard her voice, my hand froze midair. Laura? It's me. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need to tell you something about your father. Something you were never supposed to know. You deserve the truth. You always did. Please call me. Click. I hadn't spoken to my mother in over a year. Not after what happened at Thanksgiving, not after she chose him again, and now she was calling me with cryptic bullshit like this. I grabbed my phone and dialed Greg, my attorney. He picked up on the second ring. Greg, I don't care what time it is. I need you to dig into something. Deep. My father's finances, my mother's too. Everything. He hesitated. What's going on, Laura? I think my mom's about to drop a bomb, and if I'm right, it's going to blow up everything my father built. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. I walked to the window, staring out at the dark street. My fingers were ice cold. I hated this feeling, the same one I'd had growing up in that damn house, like I was always holding my breath, waiting for the next explosion. Start with his companies, the LLCs under his name, offshore accounts, properties, any backdoor contracts from the last 20 years. I want a paper trail. You realize this means war, right? Greg said quietly. It's already started, I muttered. Because the truth is, I knew something had been off for years. His money was always too clean, his charm too perfect. He controlled everything, our home, my mother, even me, until I cut ties. Growing up, I saw how he manipulated her. He'd throw diamonds on the table after making her cry in the bathroom. He never hit her, but he didn't have to. His words did the damage, and she'd just sit there and let it happen. But not this time. I turned from the window, walked straight to my office, and opened the safe. If he thought I was going to stay quiet, he was about to find out what silence cost. I didn't even change clothes. I grabbed my keys, left the drink untouched, and drove straight to my mother's apartment, barely stopping at red lights. The sun was just coming up when I pulled into her parking lot. My chest felt tight, like something ugly was waiting behind that door. I hadn't been here since February. She knew why. Her door was unlocked. I stepped inside slowly. The place smelled like stale coffee and lavender spray, like she'd tried to clean up but didn't get far. And there she was, sitting on the edge of the couch like she'd been there all night. Legs crossed, hands folded, eyes on the floor. Like she'd been waiting for me. You got my message, she said, not even looking up. You always leave messages like that, I asked. Just toss a grenade and walk away? I didn't know what else to do. Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. I walked closer, and that's when I saw it, a thin purple mark on her wrist. Who did that? She flinched. It's nothing. Bullshit. Did he grab you? I said it's nothing, Laura. She stood up fast like she could outrun the question. I didn't push, not yet. You know what kind of man he is, she said, walking to the window. You always did. I thought if I stayed, I could keep things from getting worse. You thought being silent was safer. Sometimes it was. I clenched my jaw. I wanted to scream, but I held it. She was already unraveling. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. One image. It was him, my father, at some rooftop bar with a blonde in her 20s. His hand was on her thigh. Her dress barely covered anything. And he was smiling. Same smug grin he wore in every family photo. I turned the phone so my mother could see. She blinked at it. No shock, no gasp, just a tired nod. She's not the first, she said quietly. She won't be the last. I wanted to break something. Instead, I paced into her bedroom. I needed to breathe. The room looked untouched, like she hadn't been sleeping here. Then I saw it, a cardboard box shoved halfway under the bed. I pulled it out and opened the lid. Photos, old receipts, legal papers, envelopes with my father's handwriting. I held up a stack of documents, titles to properties I'd never heard of, dated decades ago. Some had her name on them. Others were scratched out, rewritten. What the hell is all this? I asked, loud enough for her to hear. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Things I wasn't supposed to keep. My throat tightened. You held on to this all these years? She nodded. I guess part of me always knew. One day you'd come back. And when you did, I wanted you to know who he really was. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I knelt beside the box and started digging. I pulled out the first manila folder and flipped it open. There were photos, grainy low-res prints that looked like they'd been taken from across the street or through a window. One showed my father shaking hands with a man I recognized from the news years ago, some developer who got nailed for fraud in a land scheme in Harris County. Another showed a pile of envelopes stuffed with cash on my father's desk. I reached deeper and pulled out a thin stack of signed contracts. Most were half redacted, like someone had tried to destroy them and gave up halfway through. I held one up to the light, dated back to 1997. It named a company that didn't exist anymore. Underneath in small print, zoning override agreement. This wasn't just shady, this was criminal. I leaned back on my heels and stared at the box like it had grown teeth. A memory hit hard, me sitting on the stairs, maybe 10 years old, watching my dad corner my mom in the kitchen. She was crying, not loud, just the kind of soft sob that makes your stomach hurt. He had one hand on the counter, blocking her in. You don't make decisions, Diane. You nod, and you smile. That's your job. That night, she still served dinner with a full face of makeup and red wine on her breath. Another paper slipped from my hands and floated to the floor. I picked it up. A deed transfer, my mother's signature forged at the bottom. I didn't even realize I'd stood up. My blood was boiling. I walked out of the bedroom, straight onto the tiny balcony so I wouldn't put my fist through her drywall. I called Greg. It's real, I said when he answered. He's got land titles under fake company names, ghost signatures, shady partnerships. I need you to file paperwork and start a formal investigation. We're not sitting on this anymore. He didn't ask dumb questions. You want me to start with the shell companies or the development permits? Both. He's got a paper trail. Start following it. Got it. You okay? No. I hung up. I turned back toward the apartment. My mother was standing just inside, holding a mug like a shield. He told me those were just investments, she said softly. He always made it sound clean. Did you ever ask questions? She shook her head. Every time I did, he made me feel small, like I should be grateful I even had a place in his life. And there it was, the whole truth in one sentence. I looked at her, not with pity, but with fury. Not at her, at him. For grinding her down into someone who thought silence was survival. I went back to the bedroom and picked through the last of the box. Stock transfers, bank records, even a typed-up list of names with amounts written in the margins. Bribes, most likely. The weight of it hit me then, like someone had dropped a cement block on my chest. This wasn't just a bad father. This wasn't a man who cheated on his wife and ruled the house with intimidation. This was a criminal. And I'd been walking around with his last name like it meant something. I sat on the edge of the bed, breathing hard, staring at the papers scattered across the floor. I was going to take everything from him. Everything he built on lies, silence, and fear. But one thought kept digging at me, clawing at the back of my skull. How deep did this go? And how much worse was I about to find? I brought the box home that night and dumped everything onto my living room floor. Contracts, receipts, letters, photos. It was chaos, but I needed to see it all. Lay it out, make sense of the mess. By 2 a.m, I was still sorting. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't showered. I just kept flipping through pages like I was chasing something. Some final nail, some undeniable proof that this wasn't just greed. It was calculated destruction. I started building a file, not digital, not cloud-based. A physical binder, tabs, sections, timestamps. I didn't trust anyone with this yet. I found wire transfers from overseas banks into shell companies based in Delaware, all routed through fake accounts with dead-end addresses. Some of the names match contractors I remembered from back when I was a kid. Guys my father called business partners at backyard barbecues while he poured them whiskey. One receipt stopped me cold. A land purchase in Oklahoma. 5 acres sold for $300,000, signed by a man whose business had gone bankrupt the next year. I looked him up, still living in a trailer. He'd been bought out, crushed, and discarded. My father wasn't just corrupt, he was a predator. I sat back, rubbing my eyes, thinking about all the years my mother smiled through his bullshit. The bruises that didn't show, the birthday parties where he didn't show up but still made it about him. She used to apologize for everything. For dinner being late, for speaking too soon, for the weather. He made her small on purpose, and now I saw it for what it was. Control, power, and silence bought with fear. The doorbell rang just past noon. I opened it to find her standing there, holding a paper bag of pastries and looking like she hadn't slept either. "I thought you might need something to eat," she said, almost shy. I let her in without a word. She took one look at the folders stacked across my floor and sat down slowly. "You really think you can bring him down?" I didn't answer right away. I handed her a pen and a packet of legal documents Greg had emailed over an hour ago. "What's this?" "Protection, a restraining order, legal declaration of abuse, affidavit of financial misrepresentation. I need your signature." She didn't move. "Mom, if you don't sign, he keeps winning. You stay vulnerable. I'm not asking you to take the stand. I'm asking you to stop being a shield." She held the pen like it weighed 100 pounds. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. "I don't want him to come after you," she whispered. "He already is, just not with fists, with lawyers, money, silence." She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something different. Not fear, not guilt, resolve. She signed, page after page. When she finished, she looked up. "Do you hate me for not leaving sooner?" "No," I said, finally sitting next to her. "I just hate that you had to survive him at all." We sat there for a while, no more talking, no need. Later that night, after she left, I added her signed documents to the file, sectioned off, dated, protected in sleeves. The binder was thick now, heavy, and we weren't done. Because taking down a man like him wasn't just about evidence. It was about dismantling everything he built, brick by fraudulent brick. I closed the file, locked it in my safe, and turned off the light. Tomorrow, we go to war. First thing the next morning, Greg filed the subpoenas. We targeted 2 of my father's holding companies and 3 of his oldest business partners, guys with just enough skeletons in their closets to either fold or fight. Greg was smart, strategic. We didn't come in screaming. We came in surgical. While he worked the legal angles, I used the one weapon my father couldn't anticipate, my job. I didn't say anything to my supervisor at the hotline, just stayed after hours and scanned our old logs. I remembered names, voices, locations, victims who called years ago, sobbing about being pushed out of their homes, about mysterious developers showing up with buyout offers and veiled threats. One woman, Cheryl from Beaumont, had called back in 2018, said someone offered her $30,000 for a family-owned auto shop her husband had built from the ground up. When they said no, their property taxes tripled, code violations came out of nowhere, and their financing mysteriously vanished. Guess who owned the property a year later? I tracked Cheryl down through a housing complaint forum and called her directly. "Did the man you dealt with wear a gold ring with an eagle on it?" I asked. She paused. "Yeah, he said it was his family crest." I nearly laughed. "That damn ring. My father used to polish it before meetings like it was a crown." "He ever say his name?" "Not directly, but he called someone named Richard in front of me. Told him to shut her down." That ring stayed in my nightmares for months. Richard, my father. I added her story to the binder, now officially titled Quiet File in Sharpie across the front. Then came the message. A white envelope slid under my front door with no postage, no return address. Inside, a typed letter. "Laura, you're walking into something you don't understand. Let this go. You have your life, live it. No name, no signature." But the stench of him all over it. I drove straight to his office tower on Pearl Street, didn't call ahead. Walked straight past the receptionist like I used to when I was a teenager, back when I still thought the man behind that door was worth impressing. He was sitting behind his desk, relaxed, flipping through a leather-bound ledger. He didn't even look up. "Still playing detective," he said. "You sent me a threat?" He closed the book calmly. "I sent you perspective. You're making a mess. For what? Revenge? Some distorted idea of justice? For the people you buried, for the woman you turned into a shell, for every lie you built your kingdom on." He smiled. "You're angry. You'll burn yourself out. Eventually, you'll come to your senses." I stepped closer. "I've never seen things clearer." "You're not ready for what happens when the truth comes out," he said, voice low. I leaned in. "Then you better brace yourself, because the truth is coming whether you like it or not." He didn't respond, just looked at me with that same smirk that used to make me shrink. This time, it didn't move me. I walked out of his office without waiting for him to throw another jab. By the time I got to my car, Greg had already texted. Subpoenas were served. Discovery was underway. I stared at my phone, heart pounding, and finally let out a breath. He wasn't going to intimidate me, not with silence, not with money, not with fake fatherly concern. I was all in. By the time I pulled into my driveway, Greg had already sent the paperwork: civil suit, fraud, coercion, racketeering, and financial abuse. On top of that, a motion to freeze every account tied to my father's name or businesses. We didn't wait for a court date. We hit hard, right out of the gate. Greg filed it all publicly. Within 48 hours, the press got hold of it. At first, it was a whisper, an article buried 2 clicks deep on a local news site. Real estate mogul under investigation. But then someone leaked the subpoena list. Then someone else leaked the property records. And then it exploded. Headlines popped up all over Dallas. Laura Beckett, daughter of Richard Beckett, files suit against father amid financial crimes probe. My name was everywhere. So was my face. And within a week, so were the lies. A glossy statement appeared in the Dallas Tribune, clearly crafted by a PR team. Our daughter is struggling with unresolved trauma. We love her and hope she finds peace, but these claims are false and motivated by personal pain. He used the wounded daughter angle, the oldest trick in the book. Then came the articles about me, spun garbage. Anonymous sources accusing me of being erratic, emotionally unstable, cut off from the family by choice. One even implied I had a mental health breakdown in college, which was just me leaving a toxic house and not looking back. He paid for all of it. I knew it. But I also knew one thing he didn't. I wasn't doing this alone. Because 3 days into the media storm, my mother walked into a press conference in a navy blue blazer and told the truth. My husband was not a good man in private. He controlled our lives, our finances, and he made sure our silence felt safer than our freedom. The reporters started shouting questions, but she didn't flinch. I support my daughter, and I won't let fear write our story anymore. Watching her say it live on TV nearly broke me. I called her that night. You didn't have to do that. Yes, she said, I did. Are you okay? I'm terrified, she admitted. But I feel lighter than I have in 30 years. That shut me up. After that, the narrative shifted. Slowly, but it did. People started digging into my father's past. Old employees, burned partners, victims. One by one, they came forward. Quiet messages, emails. A few ready to talk to Greg's team, others just sending receipts and paper trails. I watched the machine start to crack. A local station did a feature on shady zoning approvals tied to my father's companies. A journalist from Houston sent over a list of shell corporations that had gone dark after securing million-dollar contracts. Then the photos hit. Not the ones I had, but newer ones. Him walking out of a hotel with the same blonde from the rooftop bar. Her age? Probably 23. It was disgusting, but it did what I needed. The public stopped seeing Richard Beckett, real estate genius. They started seeing a fraud, a liar, a man whose empire had termites in every beam. But even as the headlines turned, I felt it, that pit in my gut, that cold pressure in my chest, because this wasn't over, not even close. The empire was crumbling, yeah, but it wasn't dead, not yet. And people like my father didn't go down without a fight. I stared out my office window at the city skyline, the one he used to rule. I had momentum. I had proof. Now I needed to hold the line. I didn't sleep more than 2 hours a night that week. Every morning, a new headline. Every night, another hit piece. His people were working overtime to make me look unhinged, bitter, spoiled. Didn't matter. I kept pushing. Greg arranged a meeting with a former partner, Frank Delaney. I remembered the name. He used to show up to our house in a pickup full of blueprints and mud. He hadn't been seen in over a decade. We met in a diner off Route 380. Frank looked older, heavier, but his eyes were sharp. He didn't shake my hand. Just sat down, ordered black coffee, and got right to it. I knew this day would come, he said. Didn't think it'd be you who brought it. You worked with him for how long? I asked. Too long, 8 years. Helped him build that first cluster of townhomes outside Arlington. He leaned forward. You know how we got that land? I didn't answer. We didn't buy it. We pressured the owner out. Guy named Hillman, veteran, owned a pawn shop and lived above it. Your dad got the zoning board to deem the building unsafe. They condemned it in 2 months. He offered Hillman 10 cents on the dollar, told him take it or end up on the street. My stomach turned. Frank kept going. When Hillman refused, someone broke into the shop. Fire started. Never caught who did it, but guess who bought the land the next week? Jesus Christ, I muttered. That's how he operated. Pressure, threaten, destroy. If that didn't work, he'd send someone like me to be the good guy. offered just enough money to make the pain go away. And you went along with it? Until he screwed me too. Frank slid a folder across the table. Inside, payment records, emails, correspondence between Beckett Development and a sketchy comp firm that barely existed. He created fake workers' comp claims, Frank said. Faked injuries, collected payouts. Sometimes he used real employees. Other times he used aliases. He made over 300 grand in 2 years off that scam alone. I stared at the paperwork. Cold, clear, damning. You willing to testify? He nodded once. Someone's got to say it out loud. I left that diner with enough ammunition to blow a hole through what little was left of my father's reputation. But with every step forward, the pressure tightened. Social media was a war zone. Anonymous messages, fake accounts, even death threats. My job tried to stay out of it, but I could see the unease in my coworkers' faces. Like I was radioactive. Didn't matter. I kept showing up, kept building the file, kept adding names. Mom surprised me more than anyone. She called every day, showed up with dinner sometimes, even offered to speak to a few of the former tenants who'd been harassed out of their homes. I should have done this years ago, she said while washing dishes in my sink. You were surviving. That's not nothing. She gave me a look. You always talk like you didn't grow up in the same house. But you did. You just ran faster. I couldn't argue. I didn't want to. The call from Greg came late on a Thursday night. Laura, we've got movement. What kind? The AG's office reached out. They're reviewing the evidence, seriously. Also, the judge approved full discovery. No delays. He's going to have to open his books. I stood up, heart racing. You think he'll settle? Greg snorted. Not a chance. He'll fight. But he's losing ground fast. I hung up and stared at the binder on my table. It was twice as thick now, full of names, dates, crimes, lives ruined. He used to be untouchable, a giant. Now he was just a man, cornered and crumbling. And I wasn't done yet. The next morning, Greg sent over a 10-page list of filings from my father's new legal team, top-tier firm out of New York, 3 senior partners, and a reputation for dragging things out until the other side runs out of breath or money. They filed motions to dismiss, motions to delay, even counterclaims accusing me of defamation, harassment, emotional sabotage. That last one actually made me laugh. But it hit me. This wasn't just about him scrambling to save face anymore. He was aiming to bury me. By the end of the week, I'd done 4 interviews, taken 2 panic calls from victims who were now getting anonymous threats, and spent an entire night blacking out names in copies of court documents for press release. I was drained, but I didn't stop. Then came the invite, a baby shower, my cousin Rachel, on my mom's side. Not someone I was close to, but she'd always been kind. And she asked me directly, said she didn't want to pick sides. What she didn't say, but I already knew, was that he'd be there. I'll go, I told my mother when she asked. You sure? He doesn't get to own every room anymore. We walked in together. My mom wore red, on purpose. She never wore red before, said it made her feel too loud. I could feel eyes on us the second we entered. Half the room smiled, the other half whispered. And then I saw him, standing by the punch bowl like some old war general, still wearing that stupid eagle ring, still acting like none of this touched him. He walked over with his usual practiced warmth. Lara. Richard, I said flatly. I hadn't called him Dad in years. He tilted his head like I was amusing. Still playing hero? I didn't answer. He leaned in just enough that no one could hear. You think you've got control, but all this will come back to bite you. Courts don't care about your vendettas, neither does the public. They forget fast. You're scared, I said. That's why you brought in the wolves. You know what we found. You know what's coming. He chuckled. What you think you found isn't enough to stick. Trust me, I built this life knowing exactly what to hide. I looked him dead in the eye. And I built a case knowing exactly what to show. He stepped back, eyes narrowing. You don't have the stomach for this. I raised you soft. No, I said. You raised me scared. I made myself strong. His jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw it, the crack, the thing underneath the charm. A man watching his control slip through his fingers. I turned and walked away without another word. Mom was already by the window, arms crossed. How'd it go? He knows he's losing. Good, she said. Took him long enough. We didn't stay long. Said our hellos, ate some cake, left before the speeches. As we walked out, I felt it. That shift. The weight hadn't left, but it had moved. I wasn't buried under it anymore. I was carrying it, holding it up. Back at my place, I dropped my bag and sat on the floor in the middle of my living room. No laptop, no files, just silence. And for the first time in months, it didn't feel threatening. I knew it wasn't over. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. The courtroom was colder than I expected. No jury, just a judge, a court reporter, and rows of stiff chairs packed with attorneys, reporters, and a few too many familiar faces. He sat at the defense table, calm like always, suit perfect, hair in place. But his hands were clenched. I noticed. Greg leaned over. Judge approved everything for review. If this goes how I think it will, it's the beginning of the end. I nodded. Didn't speak. I didn't need to. They started with the quiet file, laid out page by page, contracts, shell corporations, forged deeds, ghost employees. Then came Frank's testimony. He didn't flinch. He named names, dates, showed copies of workers' comp scams, payments for silence, threats. The room shifted with every word. Then the judge looked at my father. Mr. Beckett, she said, I've reviewed the materials, and unless you have immediate evidence to dispute these claims, I'm issuing the following. She started reading. Restraining order for my mother. Asset freeze. Everything tied to Beckett Development. Full financial audit. And finally, referral to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation. He didn't move, just stared forward, jaw locked. But I saw it. The twitch in his eye. The crack widening. He lost control. The judge banged the gavel. We're adjourned. I stood slowly, shoulders back. Didn't look at him. Didn't need to. He could sit there in that stiff chair with his empire burning around him. Outside, the press swarmed. Greg blocked most of it. I kept walking. My mom was waiting at the bottom of the courthouse steps, her hands tucked into her coat. You did it, she said. We did. She nodded. No tears. Just something steady behind her eyes. Something I hadn't seen since I was a kid. I took a breath, felt it settle deep in my chest. This wasn't the end. The criminal case would take time. The headlines would come and go. But the power he held, his grip on us, it was broken. I looked up at the sky, gray and flat, and I finally felt free.